This morning on the Ag Issues program, a pleasure to bring on to the program Roger McEowen, professor of agricultural law and taxation at the Washburn University School of Law. He joins us in studio this morning. Roger, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Greg. Just fine, thanks.
And it's the perils of travel. more you than me, by the way, as well. But never a dull time for you throughout the summer months.
No, I just got back in from Iowa last night, and tomorrow I leave for Nebraska, and next week is North Dakota, and then it's on to Illinois, and on it goes.
On and on it goes, most definitely. All right, let's get to it. A lot of things that you and I have discussed concerning what has come out of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. But one of the things it's not done, ignited a debate about the effect on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP, which I assume many have characterized that One Big Beautiful Bill Act as making cuts to SNAP as far as just on the surface. But if you look deeper down into it as well, there are different things. You can interpret it a lot different, too.
Yeah, it doesn't cut any funding. It changes the eligibility criteria and imposes new work requirements and modifies the program's funding structure, which will indirectly lead to millions of people losing their benefits. But it's not a cut in SNAP funding itself. It's an attempt by the administration to cut out waste, put in some work requirements for those that are able-bodied adults that are able to work, and make sure that those that are truly entitled to the SNAP benefits get their benefits. And that's the whole point of this. We go back to DOGE and all of that, and it's an attempt to streamline the government and make sure we're not wasting funds, and that's what's happening with respect to SNAP benefits.
And, you hear the term SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Mm-hmm. I think people need to be reminded this is what used to be called the food stamps program.
Yeah, that's what it is. And the goal of SNAP, just like it was with respect to food stamps, is to help low-income households buy the food that they need to maintain good health and nutrition. And so now the benefits, it's not they're not handing out cash. The benefits are provided on an EBT, electronic benefits transfer card, that works like a debit card. And so recipients can use that card to buy eligible food items at most grocery stores and convenience stores, and even some farmers markets and online grocery delivery services. And so they can be used to purchase a wide variety of food items for the household. That includes fruits and vegetables and meat and poultry and fish and dairy products and breads and cereals and all kinds of things. But they cannot be used to purchase certain things. Of course, you're not supposed to, and the rules prohibit using SNAP benefits to purchase alcoholic beverages or tobacco products or non-food items such as pet food or cleaning supplies or paper products and the like. And that's also another aspect of the program that needs policing and maybe needs further scrutiny. But there are a whole host of requirements, Greg, that have to be followed to not only become eligible for the benefits, but to use them properly.
When you talk about expanded work requirements, people always hear that a lot. Mm-hmm. Can you explain how those were expanded as far as the ages and the requirements are concerned?
Yeah, this is addressed in 3 separate sections of the One Big Beautiful Bill, and I refer to that as OBBA. I know some are referring to it as OB3. That has a Star Wars connotation to it. In the tax profession, we've referred to it as OBBA. And again, that's also got a singing group connotation if you're old enough to know what we're talking about. I mentioned that to some students, and that could be a singing group.
Quizzical look, I'm sure.
Yeah, they look at me like, what are you talking about? They've never heard of that. That's ABBA. This is ABBA. OBBBA, and the first provision extends work requirements to a broader range of individuals, and that's what it does. So able-bodied adults without dependents are now subject to work requirements until age 64. They bumped that up from age 54. And in addition, parents of children ages 14 and older have to now meet work requirements to maintain their benefits. And the bill also removed exemptions for veterans, those experiencing homelessness, and former foster youth, as long as they're fully able-bodied. And so that's one section on the expanded work requirements and the age change.
Another part of this as well, the changes to alien eligibility, and that's, can you explain specifically what the One Big Beautiful Bill Act did there.
Well, it narrows the list of non-citizens who can qualify for benefits. It amends the 2008 Farm Bill, that portion of the 2008 Farm Bill, to shorten the list of non-citizens that are eligible for benefits. And specifically what it does is remove eligibility for groups that were previously qualified, such as refugees and asylum seekers. They're no longer able to receive benefits unless they meet stricter criteria, such as having U.S. lawful permanent resident status. And the only non-citizens who remain eligible for U.S. lawful permanent residence count for benefits are certain Cuban and Haitian entrants and citizens of freely associated states, and there is a specific definition of that.
One of the things, too, that people hear about, portion of the benefit cost has been shifted to states, and then they hear the term high payment error rates as well, and that's all associated together, too. Yeah,
this is the first time this has occurred in SNAP's history in terms of the shifting of the benefits to the states, a portion of the benefit cost being shifted to the states. So starting in 2028, with respect to this, states that have high payment error rates will be required to contribute a percentage of the benefits cost. And that is a responsibility that was previously covered entirely by the federal government. And so what the bill is trying to do here, what Congress is trying to do here, is incentivize the states to clean up their programs, tighten their eligibility and verification processes, and further increase the percentage of people who legitimately receive assistance. So focusing on those who are truly in need that are eligible. That's the purpose of what Congress is doing here. And specifically on the percentage share, the bill reduces the federal government's share of SNAP administrative costs from 50% to 25% starting in fiscal year 2027. So that's going to mean that the states are responsible for the remaining 75% of administrative costs. That is a major financial shift that is expected to put a strain perhaps on state budgets. And then in addition, Greg, for the first time in the program's history, the Act makes states responsible for paying a portion of SNAP benefits themselves if their payment error rates exceed a certain threshold, and that's generally 6%. And so the specific cost share for states ranges from 5% to 15% of the benefits that they distribute, depending on how well they've run their program, depending on their error rates in their states. And that provision, again, is going to start in fiscal year 2028 with delayed implementation for states with exceptionally high error rates. So if the states haven't been doing a good job, then they're going to have to pick up a higher portion of the cost.
You talked about the savings that will take place under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act concerning SNAP. What was the CBO estimate, because they estimate everything, as to what they're going to save or what they're going to lose on that as well? So what was the estimated savings on that?
Well, the CBO is estimating the changes are going to lead to a reduction of about $186 billion in federal SNAP spending over the next decade. So you got to spread that out over a decade. So about $19 billion a year. And that will not come from reducing the amount of food assistance for those who remain eligible. And that's the key point. So it's not a cut, but from an estimated 2.9 million people losing their benefits entirely due to the new rules because they really weren't entitled to the benefits in the first place.
So, and this would all go into effect in 26 if everything is passed and ready to go on that?
Fiscal year, for some of it, fiscal year 27, which largely would be 28.
So it'd be, yeah, okay. Okay, I got you there. Because September 30th is the normal start to the government fiscal year.
October 1.
Or October 1, yeah.
We're about ready to end the current fiscal year.
Right.
That's the other thing in the commodity title. We're talking about all the increased funding for farmers, the safety net. Well, the farmers are going to see a tremendous increase next October, because that's for fiscal year 2025, which means those payments will come next year.
Next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's when we saw the WASDE report last month, and I put a piece out on this, that every 10-cent drop in the price of the mid-year average price of corn is another $1.2 billion to corn farmers. Well, that's not this year. That's next year.
That's next year.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Roger McEowen, professor of agricultural law and taxation at the Washburn University School of Law, is our guest on the program this morning. And Roger, you and during the Ag Law and Tax Report, this morning's Ag Law and Tax Report, you brought up a very good point on a topic, And I'm sure if you've watched television, as used as an example, the old Andy Griffith show, where Gomer makes a citizen's arrest of Deputy Fife for making an illegal U-turn in Mayberry. Well, this means talking about citizen's arrest, and of the fact that, one, you ask, is it permissible? And two, if so, is it a good idea?
The first part of that question, the response would be, it depends. The second question there is no. It's probably not a good idea in most situations, unless you're angling for some type of reaction that may harm you. I would not suggest it. But it does depend, and it depends because state law differs. It depends on where you're at. And some states allow it. In fact, about 35 states allow citizen's arrest. About 15 states don't allow it at all. And the states that allow it have different statutes, and even in some states that don't have statutes, they have common law. They have court opinions that basically outline how you do it and when it is allowed and what situations it's allowed in. So it really depends, and you have to be familiar with your particular state's rules, whether that's statutory or whether that's made through the courts, as to when and how you can execute a citizen's arrest.
Which makes it interesting in that not only if you do make a citizen's arrest, you yourself who made the claim can open yourself to so many different types of legal issues if you're able to do that. Because one, I would assume if you make a citizen's arrest, you'd probably have to go to court to describe what the event or the incident that occurred. Yeah,
if you get challenged, that's probably what's going to happen. You're going to get sued perhaps for false imprisonment. Then you're going to have to establish to the satisfaction of the court that you followed applicable law, if it was even allowed in your state. And this is not just an esoteric issue to be talking about, Greg. We've got this can happen on farms and ranches, given the remote nature of farms and ranches, particularly as you move further west. You find somebody on your property or out in a barn messing around. I used to be a county attorney in Sandhills of Nebraska, and very early in my career, and we had problems with cattle rustling up in the Sandhills, and I didn't have much of a budget. I had hardly zero budget as a county attorney in one of those Sandhill counties. We only had one county. Our county seat was we only had one town. Our county seat was the only incorporated town in the county, and that had 300 people in it. It's got less than that now. And it was a lot of vigilante justice. You took care of things on your own. Well, that can be dangerous in certain situations. You have to be very careful with respect to that. So you're right. You're asking for problems if you do this. Now, can you do it? Yeah, you can. And Kansas has a specific statute on it that allows you to do it. But you better be ready for a challenge and better be ready to prove yourself in court. And, of course, that's going to cost you money to hire an attorney and defend yourself and take time to do that. Because
in Kansas, for instance, it is lawful to make a citizen's arrest, but it's really off of two main situations that have occurred, maybe is the better way to put it.
Yeah, the first situation is that if you can do it if a felony has been committed or is being committed and the person making the arrest has probable cause to believe that the arrested person is guilty of that felony. So the first requirement there is you've got to make sure that it's actually defined as a felony, what you're arresting the person for, not a misdemeanor. The second angle of this is that you could also make a citizen's arrest for any crime other than a traffic infraction or cigarette or tobacco infraction that is being committed by the arrested person in the view of the person making the arrest. So the first one has to be a felony. It doesn't have to be committed in your presence, but it has to be a felony, and you have to have probable cause. The second one is, well, it has to be in your presence, so it has to be in the view. You have to see it occur, and it could be for any crime, but not a traffic offense or cigarette or tobacco infraction. So those are the distinctions. It could be a misdemeanor, could be a felony. In the second situation, if it's committed in your presence, the first one has to be a felony, not necessarily in your presence, but you have to have probable cause to believe that the person that committed the crime was the one that you're arresting.
And you talked about earlier, approximately 35 states allow some form of citizen's arrest, but it definitely varies state by state, and there could be 35 different interpretations of what, the ability to make a citizen's arrest.
Yeah, that's right. Let me just give you a couple of examples. In Illinois, for instance, any person can make an arrest when they have reasonable grounds to believe that an offense other than a minor traffic violation is being committed. And that's different than other states. The statute in Illinois allows for a citizen's arrest for a crime that is merely suspected, not necessarily one that was witnessed firsthand. And you can see the nuance there with the Kansas statute. Now, down in Texas, a citizen can make an arrest for a felony or breach of the peace committed in their presence or within their view. So they've expanded that to a simple breach of the peace committed in your view. And so the law is very specific, requiring the crime to be actively happening or had just happened in front of the person making the arrest. One other thing I would add, Greg, is if you do make a citizen's arrest, you need to call the authorities right away. And I just heard a story, it was either last night or early this morning as I was getting ready to come to the studio, of, you go back to the Charlie Kirk shooting. There was some display someplace. It was it might have been in Arizona. Somebody knocked over a display of flowers and so forth, and he was put to the ground by a citizen. The citizen got their cell phone out, held the person, and called the police. That's the right way to do it. That clearly was a crime that under whatever the state law was there, they need to make sure that was complied with, but it sounded like it was. But they called the authorities right away, and they still had the person in custody while the police arrived just a few minutes later. That's the way to do it. If you're going to do this and you're comporting with state law, then you better call the authorities right away. And for most of our farms and ranches, that's going to be the sheriff. Call the sheriff right away. And again, in the rural areas, it's going to take some time for them to get to your place. It's not like you're in town where they can be there in just a couple of minutes. But that's a key point. Get the authorities called right away. Because
there are so many areas of Kansas that are rural. Yeah. The majority of the state's a rural area. Mm-hmm. So you go out somewhere in the Flint Hills, if you're a farmer or rancher, to be able to do that. Yeah, that's a prime example of it right there, too.
Yeah, it is. And that's a key point. Make sure you call them right away. But it's very important to have this ability to do this for our farmers and ranchers because of the remote nature and because there's so much valuable property, whether it's machinery, whether it's livestock, that is sitting out in the open and is subject to theft, is subject to damage, those types of things. And you need to have the authority to take care of that yourself. You can do that in Kansas, but you got to follow the rules.
Roger, the two topics we talked about today, they have been posted on your blog?
Well, that's another thing, Greg. The blog is down. The whole platform is going to be eliminated at the end of September. It's over on the K-State Ag Manager site. So that's where it can be found, and I'll be transitioning my blog to a different platform here in just a few days.
Well, we'll talk about that next week. Or 2 weeks from now. So, all right, Roger, as always, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
That is Roger McEowen, professor of agricultural law and taxation at the Washburn University School of Law, as he joins us this morning on the Ag Issues program here on 580 WIBW.